Jesse Owens, Young Record Breaker by M. Eboch, Chapters 14 and 15. Chapter 14, The Longest Jump. The next day, Jesse ran 2 trial races for the 200-meter dash. The track was dry, and Jesse won both in 21.1 seconds, a new world record for a curved track. The other competitors went back to the Olympic Village to rest. Jesse stayed at the track to be ready for the broad jump trials that afternoon. He tried to watch the other events and think about what he would need to do to win that afternoon, but something kept interfering. A name, Lutz Long. Hitler's great athlete, a Superman groomed his whole life for this one event, groomed to beat Jesse Owens and prove that Hitler's Aryans were better than blacks. Jesse knew he should forget about Long and all the other athletes. He should concentrate on his own jumps and nothing else, but he found it impossible. An American reporter ran up to Jesse. "Is it true about Hitler?" Jesse frowned. "Is what true?" "That the Olympic Committee asked Hitler to invite you into his box, and he refused. He won't shake hands with you." Jesse glanced up at the dictator's box. It looked empty. "I don't know." "All right, I won't quote you, but that's what I heard." The reporter ran off. Jesse felt anger boiling inside of him. He wanted to show Hitler and the world what a black man could do. He wanted to destroy Hitler's Superman, Lutz Long, in the competition. Jesse struggled to get control of himself. He tried to remember Charles Riley's advice. An athlete could use anger, but it had to be an icy cold anger. Jesse didn't feel cold. His anger felt like fire. The athletes gathered near the broad jump pit. Jesse searched for Long. He scanned the other athletes and then stopped cold on a man wearing the German uniform. This was Hitler's ideal of Aryan perfection. He was a couple of inches taller than Jesse, with blue eyes and sandy hair. His body was beautifully proportioned and had the lean, toned muscles of a top athlete. This had to be Lutz Long. For a moment, Jesse just stared. Long walked to the broad jump pit and took a practice leap. He exploded off the board with a graceful power. Jesse remembered the racehorses Charles Riley had taken him to see years before. Long landed, laughing. Another athlete came up to Jesse. "You're lucky this is just practice. If they were measuring, he might have a new world record." Jesse had to agree. That perfect body held a competitive spirit to match. Jesse reminded himself that he was a top athlete too. He still held the world record of 26 feet 3 1/4 inches. He would show that German what he could do. Each athlete had 3 tries to jump at least 23 feet 5 inches. If they made it, they would go on to the finals. Jesse had been jumping at least a foot farther than that at every practice and meet for the last 2 years. Jesse loosened up for his first jump by jogging down the runway in his sweatsuit. He just wanted to get a feel for the runway and measure his steps. He stopped when he reached the pit. An official raised a red flag. Jesse's jaw dropped. They were counting that as a trial jump. Apparently, the Olympics did not allow practice runs. "Forget it," he told himself. "You fouled before. You have 2 more jumps." When Jesse's next turn came, he raced down the track and exploded into the air. He would show Long what he could do. He landed at least a foot past the qualifying mark. Before he could rejoice, the officials raised a red flag. Foul! Jesse had stepped over the edge of the takeoff board. His jump wouldn't count. Jesse berated himself. He had been trying to prove something. He had been showing off, and it made him careless. Now he only had 1 jump left. His stomach felt empty and sick. His legs felt like water. What if he didn't even qualify? Hitler would say he was right about Aryan supremacy, and somehow Jesse felt that if he failed here, it would ruin the rest of his Olympics. He would be too upset to do well in the 200-meter dash finals ahead. If he failed there as well, would America forget about his gold medal in the 100? Would African Americans feel he had let them down? Jesse glanced at Lutz Long, who was relaxed and laughing. He had qualified with his first jump, so he didn't need to make any more. Maybe he really was a Superman. Jesse wanted to be back home in Cleveland. That was where he belonged. This was where Lutz Long belonged. Jesse put on his sweatshirt and walked away from the other athletes. He needed time to calm down and get his thoughts in order. His legs were shaking, and he clenched his jaw to keep his teeth from chattering. What was he supposed to do? If he jumped his hardest, he might foul again. If he played it safe, he might not go far enough to qualify. The sounds of the stadium buzzed in his ears. Then Jesse heard his name called in a German accent. It was his turn. They were calling him to jump, but he wasn't ready. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Jesse turned to see Lutz Long. He was the one who had called Jesse's name. Jesse stared into the eyes of his enemy. Lutz Long smiled. "What has taken your goat, Jesse Owens?" Jesse almost laughed, but he couldn't find his voice. Anyway, how could he tell this man of all men what was wrong? "I, Lutz Long," Long introduced himself. "I think I know what wrong with you. You are 100% when you jump. Like me, you afraid to foul again. But do not worry. You do not have to be best in trials. You only need qualify." Jesse heard his name called again. This time, it really was the loudspeaker calling him for his last jump. Jesse's panic threatened to boil over. "Yes, but how do I make sure?" "Same thing happened to me last year. You draw start line whole foot back off takeoff board. Jump from there. Jump as hard as you can, but no way you can foul. You still qualify with good jump." Jesse started to smile. It made perfect sense. He could put everything he had into the jump and not be afraid of fouling. Any decent jump from him would still qualify. And even better, Jesse realized that his enemy was not an enemy after all. He was just another athlete wanting to win, but wanting to play fair as well. Jesse went up for his last qualifying jump. He placed a towel nearly a foot before the takeoff board and walked back to the starting spot. He ran, took off from beside the towel, and shot into the air. His jump of 25 feet, 9 3/4 inches set a new Olympic record. If he hadn't started so far back, he might have broken his own world record. But Jesse didn't care. The important thing was that he had made it into the finals. He had also made a new friend. In the broad jump finals, Long was Jesse's only serious competitor. The other 4 finalists were far behind their distances. The time had come for the great battle between American Jesse Owens and German Lutz Long. But for Jesse, the competition was fun again. Long jumped first. He matched the old Olympic record. Then Jesse jumped just a little bit farther. He watched Long's second jump. Long stood as still as a statue, his eyes fixed on a mark in the pit. Then he raced down the runway and took off, flying high above the pit. Jesse thought for a moment that Long would never come down. Finally, he landed at 25 feet, 9 3/4 inches. Long had matched the new Olympic record that Jesse had set earlier. The crowd cheered. Jesse rushed over to congratulate Long. When Jesse's turn came, he stood still at the start of the runway and breathed deeply. He leaned forward and sprinted towards the takeoff board. He leapt high, kicking his feet in the air, and landed at 26 feet, 1/2 inch. He was 3 inches ahead of Long. Long ran over to shake his hand. The stadium fell silent as 100,000 spectators watched Long prepare. He had one last chance to gain the lead. He gave it everything he had, but when he landed, he saw the red flag go up. He had stepped over the front edge of the takeoff board. The stadium echoed with groans. Jesse patted Long's shoulder. He felt disappointed too. Jesse loved a good competition, and this one was over too soon. Jesse had one jump left, and he had already won. Still, he wasn't going to take it easy. Once again, he would give it his best. On that magical day, he felt like he had wings. He ran fast, as if sprinting in the 100-meter dash. He hit the takeoff board and leapt into the air. He reached for the clouds. The Americans in the stands started cheering while Jesse was still in the air. When he started to come back down, he fought against it. He kicked his legs and swung his arms. At last he hit the earth and fell forward. Sand and dirt sprayed up into his face. Jesse spit out the sand and stood up with a smile. He was sure he had made his best jump ever. Lutz ran over to him. "You did it. I know you did." They waited as the jump was measured and the official distance called. Jesse had set a new world record of 26 feet, 5 1/4 inches. Track experts had claimed that no human could ever jump that far. Lutz slapped Jesse on the back while the crowd shouted his name. Jesse and Lutz walked off the field arm in arm. That evening, Jesse visited Lutz Long at the Olympic Village. They talked for 2 hours despite Lutz's broken English. They discovered that they actually had a lot in common. Both were from poor backgrounds. Both were 22 years old, married with one child, and of course, both loved sports and worked to be the best. They talked about their worries for the future. What would they do once the Olympics was over? They talked about the racial prejudice in their countries. How would it end? They agreed to write to each other and remain friends, no matter what happened. Lutz seemed happy with his silver medal. "Don't you care?" Jessie asked. "Aren't you disappointed?" Lutz said, "I am here to struggle to win, but the one I wish to beat first is always myself." Jessie nodded. "Then you really did win. You did your best and jumped longer than ever before, and you helped me do my best too." Jessie had found the true meaning of the Olympic spirit. Chapter 15. One Last Race. Jessie woke in the morning and groaned. 2 races and 6 broad jumps had tired out his body. Anger, fear, and joy had exhausted his mind. "Are you all right?" Coach Schneider asked him. Jessie managed a smile. "Yesterday was one of the best days of my life, but a day like that takes it out of you." "I can see that," Schneider said, "but I'm afraid you won't get much rest today." Jessie sighed and nodded. He had to run the semifinals and finals in the 200-meter dash. The air was chilly, with dark gray skies overhead. As Jessie boarded the bus, rain started to fall. "Those Germans are a pretty efficient bunch," Jessie joked, "but I guess they don't have the weather in line yet." The track was muddy, causing trouble for all the morning's events. Pole vaulters and hurdlers slipped and slid. Still, American athletes won the discus throw and pole vault. The Germans were getting more medals than any other country, but at least Americans were holding their own in track and field. In the dismal weather, the stadium was only 2/3 full. Jessie tried to take it easy that morning. He kept his sweatshirt on during the semifinals to stay warm. He ran just hard enough to stay in front and won that race in 21.3 seconds. The best time for any man in the semifinals was 21.1 seconds. That was Mac Robinson, another African American. No Germans made it to the finals. The stadium was packed. Everyone wanted to see if Jesse Owens would take home another medal. Jesse threw off his fatigue and focused on the event ahead. 2 gold medals were nice. A third would be even better. This was his last Olympic race, possibly ever. He had to give it everything. He shot out of the blocks and sped down the track. Once he was moving, it felt easy. He finished in 20.7 seconds, a new Olympic record and a new world record for a curved track. Mac Robinson came in second, a few meters behind him. The crowd erupted in applause. They knew they were witnessing history. As Owens and Robinson took the victory stand to get their medals, the drizzle turned into a downpour. Jesse laughed as the fans ran for cover. What did a little rain matter now? Finally, Jesse got a day of rest. He slept in, then wandered around the Olympic Village. After lunch, he took the bus to the stadium to watch the events. All afternoon, people came up to him, other athletes and German spectators. They asked for his autograph and posed with him for pictures. Jesse enjoyed the attention, now that he didn't have to prepare for any more events. On Saturday morning, August 8th, Coach Schneider stuck his head past Jesse's door. "Something's up. Robertson and Cromwell are calling a meeting." Jesse yawned and scratched his head. Lawson Robertson and Dean Cromwell were 2 of the official American coaches. Cromwell was in charge of the relay team. Jesse found the coaches with the men in the 400-meter relay. In the relay, 4 runners took turns in one race. One man ran 100 meters. He passed a baton to the next man, who ran the next stretch. Relay runners had to be fast. They also had to pass the baton smoothly. If one of them dropped the baton, they would lose the race. The 400-meter relay runners were Foy Draper, Marty Glickman, Sam Stoller, and Frank Wyckoff. They had all run in the 100-meter trials back in the United States. The first 3 finishers competed in the 100-meter dash, while the next 3 would join the relay team. Foy, Marty, and Sam had finished 4th, 5th, and 6th. Frank got his spot because he had run the relay at 2 earlier Olympics. Jesse wondered why he was in a meeting with the relay team. Ralph Metcalf was there too, and he raised his eyebrows at Jesse. Coach Robertson paced in front of the group. He glanced at Sam and Marty, and then away. Finally, he cleared his throat and spoke. "We've heard a rumor. The Germans have been saving their best sprinters for the relay. We can't take any chances." He took a deep breath. "We're putting Jesse and Ralph on the team, with Foy and Frank." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Marty Glickman shot out of his seat. "You can't do that. Sam and I came all the way here just for the relays. We don't have any other events. You can't send us home without even a chance to compete." Robertson scowled. We want to win that race, don't we? We're putting our best sprinters in." "But Foy came in behind us on the last test race," Sam said. "No offense, Foy." Foy just shook his head. Coach Cromwell said, "Foy and Frank have more experience." Sam muttered, "Yeah, and it's just a coincidence that they both trained under you back in California." Marty was still on his feet, waving his hands as he spoke. "Coach, this is ridiculous. The Germans couldn't have hidden world-class sprinters. Runners have to race to get experience. Pick any American relay team you want, and they'll win by 15 yards. Even our milers or hurdlers could beat the Germans or anyone else by 15 yards. He shook his head. "Sam and I are the only 2 Jews on the track team. You keep the 2 Jews off the team, and they'll be shouting back home." Robertson said, "Well, we'll see." Jesse winced at the anger and hurt in the room. This wasn't the Olympic spirit. "Coach, let Sam and Marty run," he said. "I've won 3 gold medals. That's enough. Give them their chance. They deserve it. Let them run." Cromwell glared at him. "You'll do what you're told." Robertson raised his hands as if holding back any more argument. "Look, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. The decision is made." He walked out of the room, and Cromwell followed. The runners sat there stunned. Jesse and Ralph muttered their apologies. "I guess I shouldn't be so surprised," Marty said. "Cromwell is on the America First Committee, so is Avery Brundage, and he's president of the American Olympic Committee. America First is a pro-Nazi group. I'll bet they just want to save Hitler the embarrassment of seeing Jews on the winner's stand." "He won't be that happy to see me and Jesse up there again either," Ralph said. "Yes, we'll have fun." Marty walked out of the room. Sam followed with one look back at his teammates. "What do you think?" Jesse asked. "Is there anything in what Marty says?" Ralph shot a look at Foy and Frank. "More likely in the part that these 2 are Cromwell's boys. They train with him, so he looks good if they win." Frank sighed. "I guess it doesn't matter now. It's too late to do anything with the relay in a few hours." "I'm sorry for Marty and Sam," Foy said, "but I want to run that race and win it." He glanced at Jesse. "You can't tell me you won't be happy to get back out there, too." "Sure. I haven't known what to do with myself since Wednesday, and if I'm going to run, I'll sure hustle around that corner. I'm just sorry it had to be like this." Jesse would run the first leg of the relay. He was glad to go first, since he hadn't practiced passing the baton. By running first, he would start holding the baton and would only have to hand it off to Ralph. If the Germans had some secret super team, they didn't show up in the morning trials. The Americans matched the world record, 40 seconds, with nobody else even close. Still, if Jesse was going to compete at all, he would run his best. It didn't matter how easily they could win or how many gold medals he already had. Each race was its own reward. The finals were that afternoon. When the gun went off, Jesse shot forward, running as if it were a 100-meter dash. Ralph started running as Jesse got near him. Jesse held out the baton, still running at top speed. It touched Ralph's hand, then bounced away. Finally, Ralph got a firm grip, and Jesse let go. He slowed to a stop as the other teams made their handoffs. Ralph shot ahead with an astounding burst of speed. By the time he smoothly passed the baton to Foy Draper, they were far ahead of the field. Foy lengthened the lead a bit more, and so did Frank Wyckoff. 2 of the teams dropped their batons in the last exchange. The Germans ran a smooth race, but never got near the Americans. Frank broke the tape about 15 yards ahead of them. They set a new world record, finishing in 39.8 seconds. Jesse joined his teammates, and they headed to the victory stand. Ralph, Foy, and Frank whispered for a minute. "Jesse," Ralph said, "you take the top platform in honor of your 4 gold medals." Jesse smiled. "Gee, thanks, but you don't need to do that." He thought for a moment. "Ralph, you should take that spot. You ran the best of all of us today. You came near to winning a gold medal 3 times before and had to settle for silver. Now you've finally got your gold." Ralph grinned, while Foy and Frank nodded their approval. For a 4th time, Jesse heard America's national anthem played in his honor. With all the trial races, he had competed 14 times. He came away with 4 gold medals, more than anyone before in Olympic track history. He set 3 new world records. He had also shown Hitler and the world what a black athlete could do. Jesse's thoughts went back to Oakville, Alabama. He had started with nothing in his favor, except a decent pair of legs and the love of his family. With hard work, good friends and family, and a little luck, he had become an Olympic champion. whatever ups and downs the future held, he had 4 gold medals to remind him. He was somebody. In addition to his medals, Jesse went home with 4 young oak trees, symbols of Olympic growth. The Olympics would keep growing to include more nations, races, and religions, all competing as equals. To Jesse, the oak trees echoed his own growth. He had grown from a sickly child to a top athlete. He had grown from a poor farm boy to a world-famous hero. His family had grown to include a wife and child. He decided to give one of the oaks to his grammar school, one to East Technical High, and one to Ohio State. The last he would save for a house of his own. It would be a memory of his Olympic glory, a glory that would keep growing like a tree, spreading its branches wide.